Now, you might be saying, well, what's so bad about the life of a pig? And I think, let's really think about it a little bit and see what's the objection that Mill's considering. Obviously, the life of a pig is not bad for a pig, but presumably people think that life should really have a higher purpose for humans than rolling around in the mud and taking care of your bodily pleasures, and that being the object of your life, the ultimate goal in your life. And one way of thinking about this objection, this doctrine of swine objection, is in the following way. That is, it looks like utilitarianism, and in particular act utilitarianism, suggests that the right actions are the ones that would lead you to seek immediate bodily pleasures. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, rap, some other kind of music, rather than, let's say, reading a book or studying science or math. And that seems to be something that would be a little bit odd for a moral theory to be proposing. Well, let's consider an example to try to figure out exactly what this objection is. I think let's get in mind a clear example to explain it, and then see how this is showing, how this would be used to show that there's a serious problem with Mill's utilitarianism. So let's suppose there's an elderly woman, has no children, is getting on in years, knows that she's not so sure how much longer she has to live. She happens to be a wealthy woman, and she's deciding how to divide up her money. And her only two relatives in the world are her two nephews. Now, one nephew, who was overindulged by his parents, spends his life getting drunk, high, and has orgies all day. That's one of her potential heirs. The other nephew, the other one that she might be leaving her money to, would be the other nephew who's studying to be a doctor, has worked, spends his time studying very hard, volunteers his services for the needy, is sort of the diametric opposite of his brother. Now, we're talking about an action. So the question that we have is, doesn't it look like act utilitarianism implies that the elderly woman should give her money to the nephew who is spending his entire life partying, having a good time, seeking bodily pleasures? It looks like you might think about it, which nephew, which is going to have the higher utility, giving all of her money to the nephew who gets drunk, high, and has orgies all the time, or the nephew who's spends his time studying, it's tough, he doesn't have much of a social life, he's planning on dedicating his life to the needy. In fact, he wants to become a doctor, and he's going to volunteer his time, or not volunteer, but he's going to at least spend a good part of his time in a very in an area in the world that has a lot of poor people, and is going to provide them medical services. So if you're looking at which is the right thing for the woman to do, which one has the higher utility, and if utility is a measure of, remember, pleasure minus pain, it looks like the thing to do is, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll nephew is the guy who ought to get the money. Now, people press on that seems to be a problem, or a problematic consequence of Mill's version of utilitarianism.